Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Games for Health and Life. And we're going to start off a game with a game. So I'm going to put my Venmo number in chat, and everybody Venmo me it's $5. And then we'll do a raffle at the end and we'll see who wins. I'm not sure everybody's trusting me on that, but welcome. I'm Doug Goldstein, and I'm infamous because 12 years ago, I tried to start a company called Gaming for Health. And we were about to be funded by VA and a major health system to integrate mobile social gaming to support wounded warriors and work on ortho recovery. And we didn't get funded, and I went off to other adventures. So more recently, I was the innovation officer of the Innova Center for Personalized Health. And January of this year, I started at Happify. So Happify Health announced a $73 million Series D last week. We are a leader in behavioral health and moving to whole health. But the platform has 70 tracks, over 7,000 activities, and they're tailored to meet the needs of people to reduce anxiety and depression. We've run 3 RCTs, and Steve Dean from Innova suggested that because I've been doing games my entire life since I was a little kid, that I had the opportunity to moderate this. So this is going to be an interactive session, and I was just kidding about the Venmo lottery thing, but it seemed like a good idea. I just didn't have enough planning time for it. So we have we have some folks doing some really, really good work on demonstrating how gaming, full gaming, not just gamification, can really be used to make learning fun. And if you ever study games, they go back 6,000 years, and humans learn by gaming. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Tony to introduce himself, then Katie, and then Mona. And then Mona's going to walk through the work she's doing in Virginia to empower a community. And then we're going to go to Tony and end with Katie. So in the meantime, this is an interactive session. I'll be monitoring chat. So we'll take a couple questions after each presenter. And if nobody has any questions, I'm sure I'll have some, and the other panelists may ask each other questions. We've got 75 minutes, and we want to have a conversation. So with that, Tony, tell them about your past and the work you're doing.
All right, awesome. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending where you're calling from. I am Tony Ma. I am co-founder of a company called Benton Technologies. Benton Technologies is a social impact company, and our mission is to democratize healthcare. We say, if we can leverage 3 pillars of, if we can leverage time, technology, and education, we can democratize healthcare, and that's what we're doing. I actually am presenting on behalf of Laurel Patchen. If the name looks unfamiliar, how did this Tony Ma come on? So I am presenting on behalf of our collaborator, Laurel Patchen, who is with MedStar hospital system. And so from that perspective, Benton Technologies collaborated with MedStar. Us being a social impact, we're actually in the process of getting our B Corp certification. Part of my passion and mission comes rooted in my origin story. So real quick synopsis, because I have other I was born in a third world country. My mom almost died giving birth to me in rural Vietnam. So long story short, she went into an eclamptic seizure from undiagnosed hypertension. The 2 doctors in that rural clinic had to carry her down 2 flights of stairs, put her in the back of a tuk-tuk, drive her about 20 miles, and then they stabilized and took a pair of forceps, pulled me out, and lo and behold, both people survived. Actually, the doctor said in this situation, they're lucky to save 1 life, let alone 2. So that's my origin story. Left during the fall of Vietnam by boat. So I actually do have empathy for a lot of people that leave their country as a result of wars. And so we left by boat. 2 boats left, 1 sank. We fortunately got switched from the boat that sank to the boat that not the day before. Went to a refugee camp, stayed there for 7 months, where about 25% of the kids died. So that's where my passion of rural health, telehealth, all this stuff, and from there, my interest in And gaming also came, of course, I was an avid gamer, but basically where we went to this, and I'll share a little bit more once we get into the story, was really getting approached by MedStar. We had already been working with them and leveraging, how can we leverage innovative research, especially gaming, to do that, and being a big gamer and seeing the value of that and where the industry was going. That was an opportunity. And I will stop there and hand it over to, I guess, Katie or Mona.
Katie.
Yes, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Doug. It's great to be here with all of you. Thanks for joining in. I'm Katie Ondo. I am a certified simulation healthcare educator through the Society for Simulation in Healthcare, and started many years ago as a speech pathologist by trade, trying to train and onboard new professionals in the acute care setting, which was very challenging, trying to find the time, the bandwidth, and then the patients available to us for training purposes, and thought there has to be a better way. Did some research and came up with an idea to build a computer-based simulation platform with Stacy Williams out of Case Western Reserve University as well. So we designed SimuCase, which you'll be seeing today. We'll be showing a demo of. And the purpose of SimuCase is to train allied health professionals within the telehealth field and allied health in general for how to work with clients before they work with them in the clinic, so they can practice in a safe environment. And we'll take a look at what that looks like in the platform in a bit, but I will pass it over to Mona for her to introduce herself as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mona El-Kafif. I'm calling in from Virginia, UVA. I'm here an associate professor at the School of Architecture. My professional background is in architecture and in urban design. I'm also the director of our urban design programs, and I'm usually teaching students how to design cities, or I'm busy building them myself. A huge part of doing this is obviously an approach to the just and open and diverse city, and to allow community members to be a part of this process. I'm super excited about looking into games as a form of placemaking and community engagement, and to couple this effort with thoughts about the healthy city. And this is maybe the gateway into me being here on a conference that is dedicated to health and telehealth. So we received at UVA a series of grants. They are under the umbrella of our Next Cities Institute, and some of them are in collaboration and actually also spearheaded by our telehealth program, which is, I believe, a very successful approach to bring digital technology out specifically into the rural areas and to help residents to be served, basically. So the project that I'm presenting today is a game that I developed with a larger group of faculty. So I'm a representative, basically, a very interdisciplinary team, and it was under the umbrella of Cassie Wibberley's e-backpack project and our telehealth program, but is also a part of our Main Street 21 approach, which is spearheaded by the architecture school, that allows, that creates seed projects and facilitates digital technology to improve the quality of life in rural Virginia. And this through the filter of 5 different lenses, and the project that I'm presenting today is covering multiple of them. So I'm extremely excited to be here with you, and I'm looking forward to a vibrant discussion. Okay, Doug, I'm meant to move forward right away. Is this correct?
Yeah, rock and roll.
Rock and roll. So I'm going to share my screen. Give me a sign if I'm running over. I'm capable of speaking very, very quickly.
Yeah, and I shared that people can put questions in chat, but I think we have some folks that are voice enabled. So maybe just raise a hand if we have, and I can manage that. So voice could work too. So rock and roll, and we got time.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So the project that I'm talking about today is entitled We Are Martinsville, or short WAM, and is leveraging a mobile game for increasing community engagement, improving health outcomes. It's a pilot project by our UVA e-backpack project, Better Health and Care for Kids, Parents and Communities program that is spearheaded by Cassie Wibberley. Sorry. I mentioned earlier that this is also one of our pipeline projects for another grant. It's an NSF grant entitled Main Street 21, and looks into the possibility of digital technology in very different forms to enhance the quality of life in rural Virginia. And we looked at this through the lens of health, education, culture, transportation, and economy. And the idea is that in this grant, we are developing prototypes that are potentially replicable in other communities. Just to give you a little bit of an idea about challenges and also great assets of Virginia, these are a series of cartographies that we generated for our grants. And you can see that Virginia, or rural Virginia in the South and Southwest, is suffering, like a lot of rural areas, from economical shrinkage and population shrinkage, which brings along a lot of other things in their tail. For example, schools are shutting down because there are not enough kids, but the schools are also serving as community centers. So it is challenging for these communities, but on the other hand side, specifically in Virginia, they have an incredible asset, which we call the natural resources and cultural resources that the region is offering. If you ever had been in the Shenandoah National Park during the fall, you know how beautiful these areas are. We have the Appalachian Trail crossing Virginia, and these smaller towns also have a very rich past, which is today really reflected in their social as well as the fabric of the cities. So the We Are Martinsville game is an interdisciplinary project that worked together with the community of Martinsville over the last 3, if not 4 years. And it allows players to learn about the city, to encourage exercises while simultaneously building new data and knowledge about their city. It's a collaboration between the telehealth program, architecture and engineering. And we developed a first prototype that was also designed and developed by Adaptive Telehealth, which gets a lot of credits here, great partners to work with. We looked at a series of other projects that doing or trying to do similar things. So we are not the only ones on this front. Obviously, gaming is a huge part of the health as well as spatial design projects. This one here is called Beat the Street. It was established already 5, 6, if not 10 years ago in England, and is delivered by Intelligent Health. And it is basically the physical station of different sites within a community, and players are passing by these stations and they are getting points through their cards, which is it's very successful. There's team building, there's collaboration with local stakeholders, but it's really much depending on a physical implementation of this game. And we were very much looking into a more flexible approach to do this through an app. There are apps out in the world as well. This is temporarily tested in Germany, in Berlin, a project that was developed specifically for people who are moving into a city, exchange students or immigrants or even refugees, for example. And this was a way of allowing new residents of the city to get to know the place. And it was basically like a digital guide that brought them from side to side, and people were able to take a shot of themselves and get points, etc., etc. We were also very interested in looking into citizen science and how specifically younger generations can be a part of making games and game technologies, and the notion of storytelling, all the oral history that exists in a community that basically will get lost if we are not finding ways to capturing them. There's a project actually in Virginia that is all about digital and oral storytelling. So we developed this app, these are early stages, and facilitated it as a placemaking strategy. Placemaking means, for everyone who's maybe not so familiar with the terminology, that when we are enhancing a site, we cannot only look at the physical artifacts that makes the site, but we need to look at the history of the site, at the people who are a part of this site and need to be active participants and partners in moving into a future of this site. We need to look into all the narratives and memories that are a part of a site. So that's called placemaking, and is a process that cannot exist without the input from the community. And at the end of the day, it's really about giving the community authorship and stewardship about their own home, and to be able, on the one hand side, to understand the past, but also direct the future. So this is Martinsville, and just a couple of slides. At the end of the day, we were looking at where would the game field take place. In our first attempt, it's taking place in Uptown, the historic city center of Martinsville. But the app in itself is geofenced, so you can bring the app also to other sites. There are incredible assets. That's a city is offering, from the river, from the forest, historic train tracks, and also a racing rink that is quite popular in Virginia. We looked at the history, looking at all the sites, going into archives, taking the guide of the city, working together with a tourist department, translating all of this into points of interests, looking at the history. And one way of getting points in the game is basically by going to the different sites that had been identified by the community and through research that are assets of the site, and to go to this place to get a point because you are there, but also to go through the game card that flies into your app, to learn about the site and to go through a quiz. So the idea here is that there is a back and forth loop between the site, learning about it and also contributing to it. We were also looking into the points of places, which is about players being able to identify the sites that they believe are really important. So that's something about players being able to contribute on an ongoing basis to the development of a game content, and to identify sites that are very much about the very specific mental map, the perception of a place from the perspective of the residents or the visitor. We were also looking into audio recording and the history of Uptown by allowing for POMs, which we call the points of memory. This isn't developed yet in the pilot project, but something that we still have on our agenda. So these are a couple of shots from our community engagement workshops. We were working with 20 different stakeholder groups, and these workshops were very open. Everyone was invited to join us, and these were really vibrant discussions, and they were fantastic for us to learn how to improve our attempt and for community members to be a part of it. And we also tested it several times, one time with the Virginia Natural History Museum and one time with the Boys and Girls Club. And the idea here is that the identification of the sites and the assets, as well as the points of places, are producing a data set that then will be very valuable for the planning department and the tourist department to move forward with new plans to improve the city. And they're actually at the moment looking into enhancement plan for the Uptown area. These are just a couple of shots from our app. So it was redesigned graphically specifically, and also the functionality by Adaptive Telehealth, really great partners to work with. When you sign up, and you will put in your name and you will say if you're a resident, which generation you belong to, or if you're visiting from the outside. And then there are all kinds of elements that you can customize: the color, your avatar, the images, the map format. All of this is individualized. And these are just a couple of shots to show you how the POI postcards are looking like and how the quiz looks like. So you're in the moment when you go close enough to a site and the sites are all geofenced, the card will pop up automatically and then the quiz will be introduced to you. Obviously, there is a great opportunity, or we need to look at how this game content can be continued to be developed by the community. So we looked at Martinsville, like a lot of other rural communities, actually have very vibrant event calendars, from Oktoberfest to the Racing Fest to all kinds of events that are related to Easter and Christmas, etc. There are also a lot of galleries and other local stakeholders who are running events. So we were looking into the opportunity to allow the game to be developed through the events that are actually taking place in the city. We are calling this Via Martinsville as a book, and that we just wrote the first chapter and the structure of the overall book, but that all the other chapters are going to be written and facilitated through the community. The armature and the back end of the app is extremely user-friendly. Everyone can edit and add content here. And this is a test drive that we did with the History Museum, where they had their Ice Age Festival, and they contributed game content also in form of game cards, as well as other events and quizzes that they were thinking about, which is basically not only something that captures all the activities that are happening in a place, but also allows to promote these events to local residents as well as visitors. These are just a couple of shots to show you once more how this is visualized on the app. And you can also see that health data are collected. In this context, it's not a pulse or something like this, but it's about steps and times of exercise. And there are these fly-in comments, or the avatar comes in from time to time and asks how the player is feeling. And we have the possibility to say, I'm great, I have fun. So there's a moment to capture also how people are feeling when they are playing the game. That's just to give you once more how the game, the digital game, is actually a part of the physical environment, and that our idea here is to really connect these two layers as a new kind of digital placemaking. We receive feedback, obviously, that it's important to allow for sustainability, and our attempt here is to bring in big data, in this context, social media data from Flickr as well as Instagram and Twitter, and to stimulate the game with voices that are coming from the outside. We are working here together with Alexander Dunkel, who is an incredible researcher who works on this for a series of years and looked at how big data can help local communities to understand and read and also predict the future of their own sites. So just these are the last two slides. We just published a paper on this project where we were able to identify a series of findings. I don't want to go into this in too much detail, but there are findings a lot about collaboration and networking, relationship to place and physical environment, and the potential collection of important data. What is really important is that the game in itself facilitated an incredible engagement process. I have, through my career, tried to work with a lot of communities, and usually the classic tools are organizing workshops and asking for feedback, and this is sooner or later ending up in a form of labor, and most people don't have a lot of time to participate in this. So usually you have the classic groups of participants, those who can afford to actually sit on these committees and workshops. The game is facilitating a much more diverse possibility for people to engage with this. It's crossing through many more demographics, also age groups, and specifically kids in this context have the possibility to contribute actively to the understanding of their place and to provide feedback. It is very joyful, a lot of fun. So residents really said they love the approach. It is replicable because the digital armature, once it's developed, can be taken to another place. And once a series of workshops had been established and the first chapter being written, we have the big hope that this can find a form of sustainability. As I mentioned, the collected data of space and place are extremely valuable because usually these data are basically retrieved from long interviews. It's very labor intensive, and we are hoping that this is going to be a novel way of understanding sites. And obviously, there's already proof of concept that having this game and being out in the world, in their environment and exercising is a very great possibility for increasing the health of every citizen. We are also looking into the possibility of teams and partnering, a younger person partnering with an elderly person, bringing the outside environment through the app into the living room. This was a very big aspect in relationship to COVID as well. So that's a project in process. We are actually, the next step of ours would be to have a promotional video. It's maybe something that my colleagues are going to be able to present already for their own projects. COVID delayed us a little bit, but we are looking forward to continue working on the project. And as I said, there's a long list of participants and collaborators who contributed to the project so far. Thank you.
So we got a couple quick questions. So how do people get information about how to build or apply or evolve this game to their own community? So this is a question from Susan. This is really super for engagement. Is this anywhere we can get information about the resources to build out? Let's see, I got to scroll down and to build elements for the game, personnel needed to design, environmental costs, so a quick response on that. And then what platform did you use for WAM? Okay, so when it comes to the game, so if you are living in a community and you believe that a game like this would be valuable to you, please just send me an email. We are still in the process of wrapping up the prototype, but our idea here is that other communities can engage with this. So we are happy to bring you on board, or I have to talk to Cassie, obviously, but the idea is that this is an attempt that is meant to be replicable. So we are absolutely excited about everyone who's interested. So just send me an email. I will put my email, yes, I will put my email interest into the chat. Sorry, it's me9gn at me9gn
virginia.edu. The platform, so it's developed for Android and for the iPhone, so it's open for both platforms. If I'm understanding your platform question correctly, we are actually in the next stage thinking about allowing it for a web interface that you actually load through your phone and a website, and that then finds the format of an app. This is a possibility to make it much more smoother for different kinds of users and different Android and etc. So you don't have to rewrite the code all the time, but you are only doing it one time. So we are looking in the next phase for a more flexible adaptation, but at the moment it exists for Android and for iPhones.
Awesome, downloaded the app. Okay, so I don't see any other quick questions. I don't see any hands raised. So we'll go on to Tony. Tony, what games for life and health have you created, and how are they going to keep me safe?
All righty, does everyone see my screen?
Yeah,
I see it.
All right, so welcome everyone. Thank you. You should see the disruptive technology. So hopefully everybody sees that. So I don't have as many slides. I'll probably do a lot more talking, but do want to share. I want to take a slightly different perspective and kind of go through, talk to you about our journey. So I am Tony Ma. I am, again, from Benton Technologies. I am talking on behalf of a multidisciplinary team. When we started this, the project that we'll be talking about is the SAFE project, SAAFE project. And it's an acronym, but we like the term SAFE. And it was in collaboration with both a clinical as well as academic partner. The clinical partner was Laurel Patchen from MedStar Washington Hospital Center here locally. We're based out of Washington, D.C., Benton Technologies is. And our academic partner was University of Alabama at Birmingham doing that. So I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of perspective. Ultimately, when we started out on this, we didn't realize that we were going to build a dating simulation game. The thought was we were going to leverage a community-based participatory research. We applied for a phase 1 grant as well as phase 2. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our experiences through that. That was funded through NIH and NICHD specifically. As part of this platform, we definitely had a lot of great academic partners, as well as put in together an expert panel of members with expertise in HIV and STI. So what we were trying to do is, how do we develop a game to kind of help address a specific problem? So what was the problem? The problem that we were talking about, and this was with UAB and MedStar, was, how do we tackle the increasing rates of HIV and STI? So just a little bit of background. The problem statement was that the African Americans and Blacks represent about 13% of the population, but they account for anywhere from 27 to 43% of various STIs and HIV, and they also have a higher level of lifetime sexual partners. And then also, as part of the trend, the reason why we were going down the path of games was African-American youth actually play more games on their mobile devices than their white counterparts. And then not only more, but just more time. And so from there, as part of this, we wrote and won an SBIR phase 1 and phase 2. So I'm just gonna walk you through some of the learnings and what we did. Had some great findings, and so wanted to share that, and definitely looking for a collaborator. So when we went into this, we knew we wanted to leverage some sort of game concept, but we actually, and we wanted to go and tackle very specific components, including increasing knowledge, intentions, and ultimately, hopefully, reducing HIV, STI. One of the challenges, of course, was how we were going to do that. So we knew we wanted to leverage a community-based participatory research. So as part of our study, we actually did that. We created a community advisory board. And when we also leveraged and had a very separate and specific LGBTIQ board as well to form to have safe spaces for discussion. We also incorporated, which also made it cumbersome, but just having multiple focus groups where we actually involved them in all decisions, even from the various what type of games. So when we presented to them this community advisory board, we actually created 4 types of genres, and we actually had that included a game like based on American Idol. We had other concepts such as the game of life, like similar to a board game. So maybe that was an opportunity. But what was surprising was the community advisory board suggested what's called a dating simulation game. And being a guy close to 50, I've never played a dating simulation game, but that was, so we presented all these various ideas, mocked them up, and kind of walked through that. And that was actually the one that was chosen. And through this formative research, what you can see here, we went through every component from the character design here. We had like some initial different character designs, from how realistic, how cartoony. And what we found out is that they wanted more realistic type games, and that was iterated through as we went through. So we leveraged a user-centered design process that leveraged this community advisory board, and we always went back to our expert panels to get guidance and feedback, and then we leverage an agile development process itself. So I wanted to share a little bit more about that, and I'll have a quick demo of the video. So from the community-based participatory, we leverage that for both phases, which is a phase 1 and phase 2. And for those that aren't familiar with the term SBR, SBR stands for Small Business Innovative Research. So as part of that, in the phase 1, we had multiple meetings, and from there we discussed different things, from what the experiences from sexual education, the language that's used by the particular target population, the game concept, as I mentioned. We went through the various story designs, even the gameplay mechanics and different components. An example was like the incorporation of mini games so within a game we actually had mini games, and then also the content, what type of contents to cover. And on here you can see like even sketches and designs of what the clinic might look like. And as on the first slide you saw, some character choices, and from there they wanted it more realistic. So we settled on this, and these are examples of some initial characters that were designed as part of the phase 1. And then we also had fun mini games to keep them engaged. So because part of that was keeping the students engaged in this gameplay itself. And then we also created storyboards that kind of looked at the different scenarios that we wanted to put them in. And so you can hear, for those not familiar with the dating simulation games, a lot of it is putting them through various scenarios, and there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of reading, so it is very text heavy. And so we learned a lot from that. So we built a skeletal prototype that received very high engagement and usability scores. And then in phase 2 we continue to refine that to continue to move the model. So in here it was a 2D dating simulation game. In phase 2 we went to a 3D based on that feedback, and even more realistic. We refined the different scenarios, and I'll talk a little bit about the scenarios and how that built on a very specific theory or framework which we leverage with social cognitive theory, so that to play and learn vicariously through these characters. We also built and looked specifically about the various dialogues and further refined the gameplay itself. So
Tony, it's fun, right? It's fun.
Yeah, fun. So I'm starting to show you where the fun part. So again, so yeah. Phase 1, high usability. It was these dating simulations, again, this was very foreign to me, but again, that's why leveraging this community advisory board was so helpful. They were really helped guide us and design this. So if you can see here, these are examples of some of the screenshots. So it's a Unity game that was built. And so from there, as part of this study, we were able to, in phase 2, further enhance. And then they had a lot of movement. They can go around and explore things on the board, like posters that could be even sexual education posters. They got points for reading it. So there were health points as well as coins that they could leverage to buy and modify. So those gamification components in there to increase knowledge. So there were different pieces, and I'll go through the different scenarios, the different missions that we called them, basically storylines that really had pedagogy around the education. What were the learning objectives of each mission? And it was these missions were unlocked as they completed one mission and another. They could skip certain missions, and then there was guidance through there. In addition, they actually had to go to class. They had to go to sex ed class, and they had to get information as well as pop quizzes throughout when they were in class. So that was pretty exciting, and they could earn points as a part of that as well. So as part of phase 2, we actually also did RCT clinical trial, where we actually recruited 178 African-American youths between 15 to 21. And we actually compared our game, which was, based on the limited dollars that we were to build, versus an active comparator game, which the name of that game was Choices. So part of that, we wanted to make sure each game had missions or storylines. So in the game Choices, they actually have 3, but the reason why we chose that is they don't have any content on sexual. So both are playing games, both have missions and a lot of parallels, but of course ours also had the mini games, but the storylines, the dialogues, very definitely similar. And we had some very positive outcomes. As part of our RCT, we asked them to really only play it for that one day that they were exposed to it, and we developed 3 missions that they had to play during that to get the incentive. But then beyond that, we said continue to play, and we'll follow up with you in 2 weeks if this is something of interest to you. As part of that, the game also leverages GPS and give the participant relevant information about STI testing. So it kind of blended some of that component of the real world too. So and I will actually get into a little bit of the story to kind of show you how we kind of built the education platform as part of this dating sim. Oops.
Hey, Tony, I think if we get to the demo and then Katie, we can circle back.
All right, sorry. So real quick, so I just wanted to mention the 7 missions were New Kids in the Block, getting testing, making preparations, just saying yes or no, which is around the consensual use it, romance and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So I will quickly show a quick demo, 30 seconds. So this is the intro where you can save games, you can load, and this is them going into the various classrooms. And so I'll just call a quick 30-second demo. So this is the dialogue and conversation. And this is some of the mini games. The current iteration has arcades that they actually go into, so they can play games within a game. And they can navigate through the environment and different areas. So I will stop there. Any quick questions? And sorry if I ran over.
I think we're good. I'm not seeing any questions in chat.
Okay.
I don't see any hands raised. So Katie, what have you been working on?
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, both Morna and Tony. I'm hoping everybody can see my screens okay at this moment. So as I mentioned in the intro, I'm a speech pathologist by trade, and we started within the field of speech pathology trying to look for a better way to train students studying to become speech pathologists, and we have grown to many fields since we began. When we started, it was looking to see students have the knowledge that they've gained in the coursework from their classes, but then how do we get them to their clinical skills and their confidence to be able to work with clients? So trying to create what they're learning in the classroom and then what they're actually practicing when they're working with patients. And how can we then better prepare them and be better trained? Simulations come into play to build the bridge. Again, learning what they've learned in the classroom to now what they're going to be applying when they're working with a client. And the simulation creates an experience for them to practice before they would potentially make any errors with a client. We'd rather them do those errors on a simulated experience so they can learn from their mistakes. So when we look at this as a teaching technique, again, I'm sure many of you may have had some exposure with simulations in your practice, but we're trying to, again, prepare students so that they are at their top of their game when they get to the clinic and they work with their first client. They can have that safe learning environment where they can repeatedly practice. Computer-based simulations that we've built here with Simcase allows for repeated practice, so they can do a simulation as many times as needed until they've mastered that skill. We can also create simulations for low incidence populations. If we're talking about rural scenarios where sometimes those patients may be hard to find in your standard clinic because they're coming from areas outside of the metro area where the hospitals are located, we can create simulations for those rural populations to, again, have the students have exposure to them and experience before they go into the clinic. And if you're using a simulated environment, you can ensure that all of your students have a similar experience. So they're all working with the same clients. You can then have a really rich discussion in your coursework about their experience in the simulation, since they've all had that same client that they've been able to work with. Ultimately working to increase their confidence, like I said at the beginning, and as we're all very well aware of what we're here for, improved outcome for patients, better health and life overall is the ultimate goal. There are many different types of simulation experiences. Today, what we're talking about here with Simcase is a computer-based simulation. So here on the screen is a screenshot of a client within the computer system that the students would work with and essentially complete it as a game where they're earning points. If they make poor decisions, they lose points. Again, their ultimate goal is that they complete the simulation with a certain threshold score that allows them to count that as an experience of working with a client at that point. There are simulation centers where you can work with mannequins. It's harder to then do repeated practice on a mannequin because sometimes that's not available at all times of the day, but there's definitely benefits to all the different types of simulation modalities. And there's definitely an opportunity for hybrid scenarios where you can combine multiple different modalities into one simulation experience. So here's a quick video what this looks like, and then I'll show you a few screenshots as well. There is a little bit of music to this, so if you haven't moved in a little while, you can definitely get up and stretch while this plays.
The setting is virtual. The patients and their stories are real. Here's how you can use our patented technology to boost your skills and enhance your clinical competency. You can expand your knowledge through observation. You can interview patients as well as their families and caregivers. You can collaborate with other professionals. You can practice administering standardized assessments. You can diagnose, make recommendations, and provide intervention. Ready to get started? Meeting our patients and learning from their stories now can prepare you to connect with your patients in the future. Simcase, creating connections, inspiring confidence.
Okay, so let's look. Oh.
The setting is virtual.
We don't need to listen to that again. Let's move on to the next slide so we can look at what this looks like. So essentially, it's a computer-based system where you need an internet connection to sign in. You can play it on any platform. Once you log in, the clients are real. So when we first started, we were using avatar representation. So we were filming and then making an avatar for the client. Mixed reviews from the users as they felt disconnected at times with the avatar and just wished they could see the client. And since we did have the footage and families and clients were willing to share the footage, we've been recently just using the footage directly within the platform. So you essentially meet the client as if you're logging into a telehealth session recording in this virtual environment. The client is now available to you to work with. You earn points based on your decision making, and then you can lose points for inappropriate, irrelevant, or insensitive questions that would not be best choice of actions with the client that's working with you. There's also a collaborator section where you can collaborate with other professionals that would be involved in this client's plan of care. We are in the process of building in multi-professional mode where you'll be able to evaluate and work collaboratively with multiple professionals evaluating the same client at the same time. Currently, in this current state, you contact the collaborator, they send information as in like an electronic chart for your review, and you can ask questions back and forth in pre-selected questions and dialogue, but we will be including more of an interactive experience with our next version that we'll be releasing. And as you work into the treatment or assessment section, again, the student would be selecting which assessments would be most beneficial to the client for that point and that encounter. If they're selecting things that would be irrelevant or considered a waste of time or unnecessary, they would be losing points. There's feedback that's provided within the simulated experience when they're making good decisions. Their progress meter begins to fill in. They get green messaging saying you're on the right track. If they make an error, a very negative depleting sound is played, and a red message saying to reconsider that selection is provided as well. And then lastly, what I wanted to touch base on, if anyone is looking to use simulations for teaching and learning, we do recommend a 3-step process. I work with programs throughout the country and have found this to be very critical in terms of their success. So doing a quick pre-brief to introduce the platform to the students, allowing the platform to provide feedback during the simulation, and then the final step being the debrief that we'll talk through here briefly. So within pre-brief, you would just be making sure they are familiar with the technology, they understand what's expected of them, they know when the assignment is due and what's expected of them within the simulation. Feedback is provided if you are the faculty member overseeing this. You have access to a faculty dashboard where you can monitor their performance. You can see how many times they've attempted it. Their scores hopefully are improving over time. That is available to you in the faculty dashboard. And that final step is the debrief. So if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share. There are 3 debrief checklists that I created to help guide debrief discussions that would occur after the simulation's completed. There's a metric rating scale that you would be rating the students based on their understanding and knowledge after completing the simulation, as well as their participation within the debrief discussion, for you to then see progress over time if you're doing more than one simulation throughout a semester. And again, the ultimate goal is the more effective a student can become in the simulated experience, the better outcomes we will then see for patients that we will be treating in the future. If
Katie,
there are, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Contact information, but a quick question. Sorry.
Sure.
Is SimuCase scenarios based on standard practice from a National Professional Society basis, based on faculty interpretation of the standards of practice? So.
Definitely. So each of the verticals that SimuCase supports uses the evidence-based practice for the accrediting body for the vertical. So speech pathology follows the ASHA guidelines, which is the American Speech Hearing Association. We then have ACOTE, which oversees occupational therapy as well as physical therapy. There's a governing body for. So each of the verticals is aligned with the practice standards that students would be required to be meeting within their profession. And I dropped my contact information here, as well as if anyone is interested in ever helping develop content, if you're working with clients or have connections with practitioners that are working with clients, it all starts with the client story. So we record, we compensate obviously for your time and involvement as well as the client's time and involvement. And we would love to then build those encounters into the system that students could then benefit and learn from in the future.
So I think, Tony, just quickly, did you put your contact information in chat? We had some people join throughout the session. Welcome. We've just
I will do that. I will do that.
Thank you. We've just gone through, we're open for questions. Are the case scenarios based on board certification questions and practice guidelines? I think you answered that, right?
Yes, we covered that, but yes, we partner with practitioners that are experts in the field that then review the content prior to it being used by our students. So there's a review board if anyone's ever interested in being involved in that as well. It's definitely an opportunity.
So we just ran through 3 examples of applying games for health and life, because when we do our business in healthcare, we're actually improving lives. One of the things that we've done at Happify is that we've gamified a number of activities in cognitive behavioral therapy and 8 other disciplines. So it's like, write down everything that's bugging you and then twist it up and throw it away. Those things have been gamified. So we have a real opportunity to connect with people, because I mean, what struck me 12 years ago is that people don't do what they're supposed to do. We do what our friends do. We do, based on faith, fun, football. And, I've really had the opportunity to see over the last 12 years, the introduction of both full on gaming, as we've seen here, and elements like gamification. So I'm scanning chat. I think voice is open, and let me know if anybody wants to come off audio and ask a question. Tony's contact information. And any questions from the audience via chat or voice?
Doug, I see that Deb asked a follow-up question from the original one. So Deb, I just want to make sure your question was answered. So the case scenarios are provided. They are real client stories. And then the framework for the choices that are provided within the scenario are based on the practice guidelines for the governing body associated with the content. So again, ASHA, the American Speech and Hearing Association, has standards of practice that a student must complete in order to be earned their credentials. And those are what are included within the scenarios. Does that answer the question you were asking, though? Perfect.
Katie, how many people have used I mean, you guys have been around for a while, right?
We have been around for a while. Yes, that's a great question. I'd have to pull some more stats. Last year with the pandemic, we've definitely grown our following in terms of it being computer-based and accessible. We are in, I think, over 300 speech pathology programs now, and there's only a few left that we need to conquer. In occupational therapy, I think we're in about 50% of the programs, but I'd have to pull stats on how many students overall we've been able to benefit and help. I can definitely look into that for you.
And Mona, how's been the engagement? How many do you have active users going on down in Martinsville, right?
Well, the thing is, we prototyped and tested the game, and we're ready to launch last summer. And we hired a local videographer to do the promotion video, et cetera, et cetera. And then COVID hit us, and the city basically shut down its social events. And it is somehow launching it without showing the capacity of the game to enhance all the activities that are happening in the community is really difficult. So we used the time to update the game design and to optimize the code, etc. So we are really looking forward so that everyone is vaccinated and we can actually move ahead with this. And again, we submitted it for a very large NSF grant. If this is happening, we are super excited to also work together with Ben Stroop from the University of Washington, who is a game designer and just published a book called Playing Locally Played, and is really about games that are able to enhance social and also physical interaction with real sites. So bringing together the strengths of the digital and the strengths of the physical. So
yeah, this whole rise of gaming and esports is actually the most popular sport on the planet these days. Tony, did you integrate students into the development of your game? So I think there's a real untapped resource in quote, the generation of game players, which actually women are the largest casual gamers. So it's not just, I go back, the heavy Fortnite players are not the only, but we have a whole body of growth in this whole industry of gaming and game development. And there's untapped resources at universities, et cetera, that can really, I think, empower folks to apply these kinds of principles, both perhaps as locations for your all games, but also new approaches to make things fun.
Yeah, when we were designing, we actually reached out to locally. So we're out in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. So George Mason University has a serious game program. So we actually leveraged them. We actually reached out up to the locally. I think there's a pocket of like Bethesda game, some of these others that really are game designers. So we do want to leverage the industry itself and people that have built various. So we actually had interns, we had students, we had actual hires as part of that. So we did involve them in addition to the community advisory board. So that was all around, and I think that's what helped make resonation and make the game play, right? I mean, we only asked them to play for 3 missions, and 39% of them finished all 7 missions without us asking when we followed up, and there was increased. We're still analyzing all the data, and we'll be publishing those. We have one manuscript out, but as we move forward, the plan is to build it out further. We have a dialogue engine. We have different cases where they can build in different modules, and this is the goal of this is meant to parallel other sex education programs to be able to put in different modules so that you can really teach the students the various components through vicarious learning and acting, including one of the modules I didn't get a chance to mention was that they can actually go and experience what talking to a doctor is through the STI, getting birth control, those different components. So we kind of model that in the game so they actually get that first experience before they actually have that. And there's GPS so that they can actually go and find actual services if needed. So that's all built into the game.
So I want to say my partner came actually that 12 years ago, VJ Laxman. I put his LinkedIn profile information. He came out of Bethesda Software. He's got 80 video games to his title, and he built an educational game unit for National Geographic. He's now with MindGrub, supporting investment in their gaming initiatives at mindgrub.com. So I'd encourage, feel free to reach out to VJ saying Doug sent you, but there's incredible resources in this area right next door to us. So just wanted to add that to the resources. Any other questions by voice or chat? We're in the home stretch, 2 minutes. I hope this was the funnest session of the whole conference. Tony, what a great game you have created, especially on such an important topic. I thought he should provide connections to Kama Sutra, but I don't think he's done that yet.
We have a dialogue in a gaming platform, so we can add different topics and different things, so that there's that ability to expand out of the platform. Yeah.
Okay, we're in the definite home stretch. Mona, any questions? Katie, any questions? Tony, any questions to ourselves?
No, I just want to thank my colleagues. Really great projects that you presented. It was very.
I've just told that we've got 15 more minutes. The session runs to 12:30. Oh my God, we have so much more time for asking each other questions. So, Joe Coletti, what do you got to say? Olga, what do you got to say? All right. Mona, do you have a game link to download where if people want to get involved and figure out how to do other expressions for other communities? I know you put your contact information up there.
Yeah, so if you go to the app store and you Google, as you search for WAM, it should actually pop up. But I just want to give everyone a warning. When you're going to the App Store now and you're downloading it, you're actually downloading the first version, which was the game is now in a very, very different state of the art. So give us a little bit of time to update. We are at the moment finishing the last codes. So if you go back in a couple of weeks, it would be more fruitful for you.
Tony, we got a question. Are you going to be adapting your game for other cultures and cultures or ethnicities.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the plan. That's why we built a robust with different assets, different even the different types of characters. So we can there's rigging and there's different components. As part of it, they can choose the avatar and they can choose who they want to have relationships with. So part of the components was you can have be in an same-sex relationship, LGBT, all the different components of, as well as we have a dialogue engine and then different assets. So that was the plan overall, so that we could maximize adaptation to different cultures, as well as even the language. The dialogue engine allows us to adapt the language as part of our focus groups. We tested it both in the Deep South, the UAB, as well as Washington, D.C. So there's definitely specific language around the two geographic regions of terms that are used. And so those were adapted in the engine as well.
Yeah, so one of the things about Happify Health with our behavioral health platform that reduces anxiety and depression, we're in 10 native languages, which is a big differentiator. And I did put in chat, if anybody'd like to download the current wellness version at happify.com, just let me know. We can gift an upgrade. We'd love to get your feedback on the enterprise version as part of the research I'm doing on the product evolution. So that's an opportunity also for the group. Everybody's so quiet. Where's the chat? So Katie, what's the direction? Where are you taking Simulcase?
Great question. So this year we're expanding into social work as well as radiography for our rad tech professionals. And then next year we'll be expanding into pharmacy. So if there's anyone available or interested in any of those verticals, again, we're always looking for content and locations that we can partner with to try to supply us with client stories to be able to create the computer-based simulations out of. We do have some professional locations that are supplying us content that then in return use Simulcase for their training for their professionals. So that's always something of interest too. If you're able to help us develop content, your practitioners could then be using the simulations for your training and competencies as well.
So I know, I know a lot of people here clearly have been in the telehealth world, and, the telehealth that we've implemented over the last year is really a new form of house calls, right? I've talked to some doctors, and actually physicians have been the current generation of physicians have not generally done house calls, right? And all of a sudden they're doing visits in people's homes. It's been quite moving to some of the physicians that I've interacted with, but many of the clearly healthcare is not about just when I'm sick. So many challenges in the telehealth world is, how do you do these wraparounds? How do you stay connected with people around social determinants, around genomics, but most importantly around personal health behavior? And that's, I think, the power of both full-on gaming that we've seen here, but also the power of gamification, incentives, rewards, but really understanding what motivates people one-on-one, because segmenting populations is really coming down to how each of us uses mobile or web in different ways. Mona, what's your plans for scaling or kind of expansion of your game?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And we already received this as a kind of feedback from a couple of reviewers. On the one hand side, I have to say, so it was a 3-year effort to develop this project, because, placemaking is not something that is an instant recipe. There is no way, because it's extremely unique to communities, to the history and memory of a place, at the end of the day, of individual community members. Places have their dynamic, and you cannot just plug in something that works everywhere in the same way. So there is, as somebody who's extremely invested into understanding places, urban or rural communities as a designer, it was extremely enriching to me. I remember early walks through the uptown area in Martinsville, getting to know the partners and stakeholders. understanding the site, all the murals that had been painted by artists who were never mentioned anywhere. So places are usually, for me, very rich treasure boxes. So to plug in a game like this into an existing site that has this history and memory, and to enhance it and to highlight it and to engage people and allow them to have fun and to be outside and love their place and get connected to it or reconnected to it, is something that needs time. But the app in itself, as well as the series of workshops that we established to, teach the community how to develop game content, for example, to allow them to, on the one hand side, read the site through the game, and also allow the site to be read through the eyes of the community members. This can be accommodated through a series of workshops, we believe. And our idea is really, once the additional tools are developed, that this is, and it's also a part of the NSF project, that this is up for replication, wants to be tested in other communities, and we will learn by doing, obviously. It needs to build trust over time. So we were very lucky, because when Kathy Viverly invited us to be a part of, at the end of her eBay project, to be a part of this project, we were already exposed to a community and a network of partners that believed in the telehealth project. That was actually the key. If you go to a brand new community who has no idea what telehealth is and sees the value in it and understands maybe the possibilities of projects like this, you will have to do a lot of more labor in the beginning to build the trust. But I also believe in, for example, educational institutions like schools, because for me, the app is a perfect device to go out with your children, out into the forest, into your communities, and to learn on site. Again, the back end is quite open and can be facilitated for all kinds of Q&As and quizzes, and play the game outside with your kids instead of going through the reading book again and again. So I find there's a lot we can learn on sites. There was the invention of the green classroom that allows kids to learn out with the plants, because seeing a carrot to grow and to take care of it has a much more efficiency than reading it in a book. So I believe different stakeholders and also galleries who have outside parks and arts that is outside in the landscape, I find there is an incredible capacity, and it was so far tested very successfully, and we are looking forward for replications.
Just quickly, Alicia, I think, I'm not sure if the chats are being saved. If you reach out to Kathleen and the conference organizers about your question around numerous opportunities from this panel, I tried to save the chat, but I haven't done it correctly. So I would reach out to the conference organizers and follow up with that quickly. Tony, what guardrails are built into WAM so that people don't get hurt?
Yeah, we had this question came up during some of our workshops, specifically with parents. The fact that it's anonymous. So when players are showing up on the map, they are, it's their code name. So it's completely anonymized information. Everything that is posted as POPs, which is a point of places, will be monitored by the team that is a set of volunteers from the community who are looking at the data that are submitted, and before it's really released into the game, it's going to be checked.
Tony, you got guardrails?
Yeah, actually, so basically the students can log in just with a pseudonym, and from there they actually have access to the app, and so they can go through the different apps and access. They don't have to really use their name. And our plan to scale is right now we have some preliminary efficacy. We believe working with our academic collaborators, they want to do an R01 study to look at the actual increased test in getting STI testing and HIV testing, but we have early efficacy of them increasing. So statistically significant data points around increasing knowledge engagement through the long term. So we want to do a little bit more. And then the long term is to look at, based on the design, to pair that with possible programs for either direct to consumer or through a program that can be paired with a sex education training and program that could be delivered. So we're still exploring that right now.
So I'm going to ask each of the panelists to give your biggest aha about working on this initiative, what your biggest aha was. And one of my best books I've ever read is The Power of Habits, which is not showing virtually here, but if you haven't read the book, The Power of Habits, that's my one recommendation to most of the participants. So how do you create positive addiction? So Katie, what was your biggest takeaway and what's the biggest kind of aha from your work with Simulcase?
Great question. So I think when we first started out, we were trying to tackle and do it all, like do it all and do it all well. And it couldn't release anything until it was all done and done and tested and vetted. Now that we've been able to grow and continue to expand, I think my biggest takeaway is we want to release often and release, the small wins that we get along the way, push them out as quickly as possible so that our students can continue to benefit from them and all of our users can use them as frequently as possible. So trying to do more of an iterative approach. We mentioned Agile earlier, trying to get to our users as much of the innovation that we've been able to build out as quickly as possible so that we can continue to see the growth that we've been able to have over the course of our tenure.
Tony, what's your biggest takeaway or aha for the group?
That the fact that we could engage the students and they could learn and they would want to learn. I mean, part of the content and training that we're doing is sex education can be dry. There could be taboos, but we were able to engage. And then again, close to 40% of these students can not only finish all 7 missions and learned about all the different components. Some of them came back to prior missions and used that. So it was a big aha for me as definitely being able to use such a platform to educate, right? And so I really got out of that. And so we're looking at how can we leverage this power moving forward, specifically since we've built such a great engine, and then take it to the next level.
Quickly, Mona, and then I'll try to answer the last question myself.
Yeah, I have also actually an answer for this.
Okay,
So,
we'll go with your answer because I'm just
so
an operator.
first, my biggest aha is it aligns pretty much with Katie and Tony. It's community engagement, analysis, understanding aside, all of this very easily, and exercising actually can very easily become a form of labor, something or a duty or something that you need to do in order to be, to stay healthy, etc. And it was extremely exciting to see that this process can actually be extremely joyful and extremely rich and diverse, and everyone creates a dynamic within this process. That was for me a very unique experience, and I'm extremely happy about it because, as I said, interviewing people is very dry, but playing a game with them is extremely joyful. And this is fantastic. I also liked a lot that it is, at least in the way how we tested it, it's extremely lightweight in the sense of once the app exists, we have a phone and the phone becomes your laptop becomes the device to generate all of this. So the technology, in contrast to the Better Street project, it's very lightweight. It can be brought anywhere else. It's very user friendly, and I find all of this extremely exciting. To answer the question,
yeah, Mona, you get the last word, I think.
Oh, the real-time outcome. So we were thinking a lot about awards and prizes, etc. And we thought the biggest award would be that the game designers are fundraising for the game and that they are reinvesting this money into the community by, for example, having a temporary urban project that activates uptown Martinsville and becomes again joy for everyone. So our idea is that it's a kind of device that plays back into the community.
So yes, I think connecting these things, it's definitely ethical to connect real world rewards with virtual rewards. But actually, one of the major intrinsic motivators of gaming is intrinsic as opposed to extrinsic award. So, well, maybe Katie gets the last word.
I'm happy to jump in. Yeah, so within SimuCase, obviously students are using them for clinical experiences. So they are listing, their clinical practice that they're doing with simulations on their resume when they're looking to apply for jobs in the future. So I think that's a tangible item that they're learning to. And we did start with a leaderboard, and students are very competitive and trying to get to the top of the leaderboard within their cohort. But now we do groups, so it's more of their school and their class, and who has the high score and the top score for that week working on that simulation, which has been obviously fun for the students to be able to partake in that experience as well.
Oh, Tony, you got half a minute for the real last word.
No, I think there's a lot of untapped, especially with COVID-19. There's a lot of things that can be leveraged. So how do we make it more fun? And I mean, there's definitely Zoom fatigue, or there different approaches. So I think this will open a new area of innovation as we move forward. So looking forward to that, what people come up with, including my existing panel, and what they're going to leverage with what they've learned as part of COVID-19 to bring it to the next level.
One last question. What games help reduce MH initial evaluation interviews? I'm not sure. I don't understand the question, but.
Is that for mental health evaluations?
Yeah.
So within social work, which we're expanding into, we're building a lot of simulations dealing with that initial interview. We're using actors portraying clients. So again, that we might be able to help if you're looking for practice there with the interview skills.
Well, great. Hey, thanks everybody. Have a great day. And remember, sitting's the new smoking.
Yeah.
Let's rock. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.